I texted the family group chat. My surgery's on the 15th. Just need a ride home. My sister replied, LOL, you really thought we'd skip Cabo for that? Mom added, don't guilt us. This trip's been planned for months. I simply wrote back, my mistake. What the nurse told her when she later called the hospital changed everything about that Cabo trip. You know those moments when your entire world shifts on its axis and you realize everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you is a lie? Well, at 31 years old, sitting alone in a cold doctor's office, staring at my phone through a blur of tears, I found myself smack in the middle of one. My family, the people who were supposed to be my rock, had just made it clear in our group chat that their Cabo vacation was way more important than driving me home from cancer surgery. My hands trembled as I typed my mistake. How had it come to this? How had I allowed myself to be so utterly alone when I needed them most? For as long as I could remember, I knew my place in our family hierarchy. My little sister, Heather, she was the baby, the precious one who could do no wrong. My older brother, Jake, he was the golden child, destined for greatness. And me? I was just Amber. The middle child, the reliable one, the one who always had it together. That's the story my parents told themselves, anyway, to justify how differently they treated us. Growing up in our suburban Chicago home, the pattern was set early. Heather wanted ballet. Mom and Dad magically found the money. Jake needed a new computer for college. They made it happen. But when I earned a partial scholarship to art school in New York, my dreams were shoved to the back seat. Your father threw his back out at work, my mother, Sandra, told me my senior year of high school. We need you close to home, Amber. You've always been so responsible. So, instead of New York, I went to local community college, rushing home between classes to help care for Dad. I told myself it was fine. Family comes first, right? Then there was the time Jake needed money for his big business venture, a mobile app he swore was the next big thing. He didn't go to Mom and Dad. Oh no, he came straight to me. You always save everything, he said, flashing that charismatic smile of his. Come on, Amber, this is a sure thing. I'll pay you back double. I gave him my life savings, $15,000 I'd squirreled away for years, hoping to eventually go back to school. The app crashed and burned in 8 months. The money? Never saw a dime. When I cautiously brought it up a year later, Mom swooped in. Why are you being so petty, Amber? Your brother took a risk, it didn't work out. That's life. You don't need to make him feel worse. No one ever seemed concerned about how I felt. Heather was more subtle in her exploitation. She'd call me at 2 in the morning, sobbing about relationship problems, expecting me to talk her through it until dawn. She'd volunteer me to babysit her friends' kids without even asking me. She'd borrow my clothes and return them stained or damaged. You should be flattered, I want to wear your things, she'd snap when I objected. It's not like you have anywhere special to go anyway. Ouch! That one stung, because it was true. Between working full-time as a freelance graphic designer and being the family's emotional punching bag, I rarely had time for a social life. My last serious relationship ended because Paul got tired of me canceling dates due to family emergencies. Your family takes advantage of you, he'd said during our breakup. And you let them. I can't compete with that. I finally moved out at 26, renting a tiny 400-square-foot apartment. It was nothing fancy. A kitchenette, a bathroom door that hit the toilet when you opened it, but it was mine. I painted the walls a soft sage green, set up my workspace by the window, and Milo, my rescued gray tabby, kept me company. My graphic design business barely paid the bills at first, but I was determined. I worked 16-hour days, designed logos, created marketing materials, even illustrated a children's book. Slowly, I built a client base and earned enough to live modestly, comfortably. But the family dynamics? They never changed. Mom would call, Amber, can you help Dad set up his new TV? Jake lived closer. Heather would text, pick up my prescriptions, I'm too busy with yoga. I always said yes. Saying no meant weeks of guilt trips and passive-aggressive comments. That's just how families work, Mom would insist when I tried to set boundaries. We help each other. Your brother and sister would do the same for you. Except, they never did. When I had the flu last winter and could barely get out of bed, No one offered soup. When my car broke down in a snowstorm, Jake was too busy to pick me up, so I paid $60 for an Uber. When I needed someone to talk to after losing a major client, Heather had to go because her favorite TV show was starting. I became an expert at hiding my disappointment, at swallowing my hurt. I learned to expect nothing so I wouldn't be let down. I became self-sufficient to a fault, refusing to ask for help even when I genuinely needed it. I was the strong one after all. The responsible one, the one who had it together. At least, that's what they thought. None of them saw me crying in my car after family gatherings. None of them knew about the therapy sessions I started last year, trying to understand why I kept giving to people who only took. None of them realized how lonely I felt, even surrounded by them at holiday dinners. "You're so lucky to be so independent," my mother once told me at Thanksgiving, as I washed dishes alone while everyone else watched football. Heather and Jake still need so much guidance. I wanted to throw a plate against the wall and scream that I needed guidance too. I needed support. I needed someone to put me first just once. But I smiled and nodded. Because that's what Amber did. Amber kept the peace. Amber didn't make waves. Until the day I found the lump in my throat, and everything changed. It was a Tuesday night in April. I'd been hunched over my drawing tablet for 14 hours. When I finally stood to stretch, I caught my reflection in the window. The setting sun cast a strange shadow, highlighting a small but visible bulge on the right side of my neck. I touched it. A firm lump, just below my Adam's apple. I swallowed, and it moved. "It's probably nothing," I told Milo. "Just a swollen gland." But in the following days, I noticed other things. Constant exhaustion, trouble swallowing, a raspier voice. After a week, I made an appointment. I didn't tell my family. No point worrying them over nothing. Besides, Mom was planning Heather's birthday, and Dad was focused on Jake's job interview. Dr. Melissa Carter, a petite woman with kind eyes, examined the lump. "How long has this been here, Amber?" she asked. "About a week," I said, "but it could have been longer." She nodded. "I want to send you for an ultrasound and some blood work. We need to rule out anything serious." The word hung there. I wanted to ask if she meant cancer, but couldn't. "Is there someone who can come with you to these appointments?" she asked gently. I thought about my mother, already stressed, about Heather's useless wellness tips, about Jake's awkward shoulder pat. "No," I said. "I'll be fine on my own." The ultrasound was scheduled for Monday. The cold gel, the technicians. Neutral face, no clues. "Your doctor will receive the results in a few days," she said. Then came the blood work, 5 vials. I sat alone afterward, drinking apple juice, wondering what was happening inside my body. Dr. Carter called me personally 3 days later. "Amber, I'd like you to come in to discuss your results. Would tomorrow morning work?" I knew then. It wasn't good news. Doctors don't call personally with normal results. That night, I barely slept. By morning, I had convinced myself of the worst. Dr. Carter confirmed my fears. "The ultrasound shows a 4 centimeters nodule on your right thyroid lobe," she explained. "Your blood work indicates some thyroid dysfunction. Given the size and appearance of the nodule, we need to do a biopsy to determine if it's cancerous." "Cancer?" I finally said the word. "You think I have cancer?" "I think we need more information," she replied. "Thyroid nodules are common, and most are benign, but we need to be thorough." The biopsy was scheduled for the next week. I researched it. A thin needle, relatively quick, moderately painful. What the articles didn't mention was how vulnerable I would feel, lying there, neck exposed, alone in a room full of strangers about to stick a needle into my throat. "Small pinch for the local anesthetic," the radiologist narrated. "Now some pressure." I focused on a water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like a rabbit. The pain was sharp, persistent. The nurse noticed and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're doing great." "Almost done." Afterward, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, an ice pack against my neck, fear heavy in my chest. Results in 72 hours. 3 days of waiting, wondering, of worst-case scenarios playing through my mind. I told my family I had a sore throat when I skipped Sunday dinner. It was easier than explaining. Easier than watching their faces shift from concern to relief when they realized it didn't require any action on their part. The call came Tuesday afternoon. Dr. Carter's number. I stepped onto my small balcony, closing the door behind me so Milo wouldn't escape. Amber, I have your biopsy results. Her tone. I sank onto my balcony chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. The pathology shows papillary thyroid carcinoma. It's a form of thyroid cancer. All I could think was, asterisk, I have cancer. And I am completely alone. Asterisk, the good news, she continued, is that this type of thyroid cancer is highly treatable, especially when caught early. You'll need surgery to remove the affected part of your thyroid, possibly the entire gland. Her words blurred. How soon does the surgery need to happen? I managed. As soon as possible. Dr. Thompson's office called within hours. Consultation on Thursday, surgery in 2 weeks, the 15th. Only after hanging up did the practical implications hit me. Outpatient surgery, but I couldn't drive myself home. I'd need someone to pick me up, to stay with me the first night. I'd need to ask for help from my family. The thought made my stomach clench. I spent that evening pacing my apartment, rehearsing how to ask. Call mom directly? Text individually? Downplay the seriousness? Be honest? In the end, I decided the family group chat would be best. That way, they could coordinate. Plus, it felt less vulnerable, less like I was specifically asking one person to step up. At 9:30 p.m., I hit send. Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know I'm having surgery to remove a thyroid nodule on the 15th. It's outpatient, but I'll need someone to drive me home afterward. Let me know if anyone is available. I stared at my phone. Delivered. Seen by Mom, Dad, Jake, Heather. I waited for the typing bubbles. Nothing. 10 minutes passed. 20. 30. I tried to focus on a baking show, but my eyes kept darting to the silent screen. After 45 minutes, a response. From Heather. LOL. You actually thought we'd miss Cabo for that? We've been planning this trip for months. My breath caught. I read and reread it, wondering if I was missing context, if this was a joke. Before I could respond, another message. My mother. Don't guilt us, Amber. This trip has been planned for months. Can you reschedule your surgery or ask a friend? The casual cruelty. It left me breathless. My fingers hovered. I could explain it was cancer. I could remind them of every time I dropped everything for them. I could beg. Instead, I typed, my mistake. Then I turned off my phone, curled up on the couch, and sobbed until my throat was raw. Milo pressed against me, the only comfort I had. The next morning, I called in sick to my client meeting. I couldn't trust my voice not to break. Around noon, I turned my phone back on. No new messages in the family chat. But a missed call from Mom. No voicemail. I debated ignoring it, but knew it would only postpone the inevitable. Taking a deep breath, I called her back. Amber, she answered immediately. Are you trying to make me feel bad? Because it's working. No apology. Just an accusation. That wasn't my intention, I said, my voice flat. I just needed a ride home from surgery. Well, you dropped this on us out of nowhere. We have non-refundable deposits. Your father has been looking forward to it all year. Heather needs the break from her stressful job. Jake is meeting his girlfriend's parents for the first time. Each justification was a tiny knife between my ribs. Every family member had a reason that mattered. Except me. It's fine, Mom, I said, though it was anything but. I'll figure something out. What kind of surgery is it anyway? You never said. I considered telling her the truth. Saying cancer would change everything, make her realize the gravity of what she was dismissing. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe the sudden, chilling realization that I shouldn't have to have cancer for my family to care about me. Just a thyroid thing, I said vaguely. Nothing major. See? You'll be fine. You always are. That's what I love about you, Amber. You're so self-sufficient. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone, wondering when self-sufficiency had become a justification for abandonment. I scrolled through my contacts. My friend circle had dwindled. Family obligations had always taken precedence. My few remaining friends were out of state or had young kids. My neighbor, Mrs. Patel, a kind 72-year-old widow who often brought me chai, had already agreed to check on Milo. "I'm so sorry, dear," she said. "I'd help if I could, but I don't drive anymore." A former coworker had a conference. A cousin lived an hour away, couldn't find childcare. Exhausting all possibilities, I researched medical transportation. $300 for a simple pickup and drop-off, but it was my only option. I booked it. That night, Jake texted me. First direct communication from him. "Hey, sorry about the surgery thing. Bad timing with Cabo and all. You need anything before we leave?" It was the closest thing to concern, but it still missed the mark. He could offer to pick up groceries, but not change plans for an actual medical crisis. "I'm all set," I replied. "Have fun in Cabo." He sent a thumbs-up emoji. No further questions. The next day, Heather posted in the family chat about her new swimsuit, a selfie included. Mom responded with heart eyes. Dad commented she'd be the prettiest girl on the beach. No one mentioned my surgery. It was as if my medical crisis was an inconvenient footnote, quickly acknowledged, quickly forgotten. I muted the chat. The distance I'd always felt from my family suddenly seemed like a vast, unbridgeable chasm. I had spent years telling myself that blood was thicker than water, that family was everything. Now I wondered if I'd been lying to myself all along. With less than 2 weeks until surgery, I threw myself into preparations. If I was going to do this alone, I would be as prepared as humanly possible. I deep-cleaned my apartment, scrubbed the bathroom, changed my sheets. I rearranged everything, moving essential items from high shelves to counter level because I knew reaching would be restricted. Then food. Applesauce, yogurt, soup, ice cream, soft foods, easily reheated. I set up a recovery station by the couch. Tissues, lip balm, throat lozenges, even a small whiteboard and marker in case my voice was affected. The pharmacy was next. Pain meds, gauze, medical tape, throat sprays, cold packs. The pharmacist raised an eyebrow. "Big surgery coming up?" he asked. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without getting emotional. "Good luck," he said kindly. "Make sure whoever is taking care of you knows when to give the medications." I just smiled weakly. I emailed clients, explaining I'd be unavailable. Most were understanding. I worked overtime, staying up until 2 a.m. to meet deadlines. Exhausting, but better than losing clients or income. Mrs. Patel agreed to check on Milo twice daily. I wrote detailed instructions for his food and medication. "You think of everything," she said when I showed her. "But who is thinking of you, dear?" I didn't have an answer. The day before my consultation with Dr. Thompson, Mom called again. "Just checking in before we leave tomorrow," she said brightly. "We'll be gone for 10 days. Oh, and we're turning off our international data to avoid charges, so we'll only be on Wi-Fi at the resort. I'll send lots of pictures." She didn't mention my surgery once. I wondered if they'd forgotten. Dr. Thompson's consultation was sobering. He was a tall man with silver hair, direct. "Based on the size and nature of your tumor, we will likely need to remove the entire right lobe of your thyroid, and possibly the left as well." He listed risks: vocal nerve damage, bleeding, infection, lifelong hormones. "Do you have any questions?" "How bad is the recovery?" I asked. "I'll be managing it alone." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Alone? That's not ideal. The first 24 to 72 hours are critical. You'll be weak from anesthesia, in pain, and there's a small risk of post-operative bleeding that would require immediate medical attention. Is there absolutely no one who can stay with you?" His judgment, however slight, made me defensive. "I've made arrangements," I said, not mentioning they consisted of an elderly neighbor and an expensive transport service. Dr. Thompson didn't look convinced. "You'll need to sign an informed consent form. Since you don't have anyone accompanying you today, I'll need you to read it carefully and ask any questions now." I signed the papers with a steady hand, though inside I felt anything but. This was really happening. I was having cancer surgery. Completely alone. As I was leaving, the nurse, Christine, followed me into the hallway. "Amber," she said quietly, "I couldn't help overhearing that you don't have support for your recovery. I want you to have my direct number. If you have any concerns after surgery, day or night, please call me." Her kindness nearly broke me. I took the card, blinking rapidly to keep tears at bay. "Thank you," I managed. "Is there really no family member or friend who could be notified about the severity of your condition?" She pressed gently. "Sometimes people don't understand the seriousness of thyroid cancer." "They're on vacation," I said, the words sounding ridiculous. "In Cabo. It was planned months ago." Christine's expression shifted. "Would you like me to call them?" Sometimes hearing it from a medical professional makes the situation clearer. For a moment, I was so tempted. So tempted to let her call my mother and explain exactly what was happening, to force them to confront their callousness. But my pride, that same stubborn pride that had kept me self-sufficient, wouldn't allow it. "No," I said firmly. "I don't want to ruin their trip. I'll be fine on my own. I always am." As I drove home, Christine's offer replayed in my mind. Why was I protecting people who had shown so clearly they wouldn't do the same for me? Why was I still, even now, putting their happiness above my own well-being? I didn't have answers. Only the familiar ache of being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who never needed anything, even when I needed everything. The morning of my surgery arrived with a spectacular sunrise. I'd been up since 4 a.m., too anxious to sleep. At 5:30, I was dressed in loose, comfortable clothes. My hospital bag was packed. The medical transport was scheduled for 6:15. As I waited, I checked my phone. No messages from my family. They were probably enjoying their first full day in Cabo, completely unconcerned about what I was facing. The transport arrived precisely on time. At the hospital, I checked in. "Your husband parking the car, honey?" the kind older woman at reception asked. "No," I said simply. "I came alone." Her smile faltered. "Someone is picking you up after, right?" "Hospital policy." "I've arranged transport," I assured her. She handed me a pager. The surgical waiting room was already half full. Patients with spouses, parents with children, everyone had someone. Everyone except me. I found a corner seat and tried to distract myself, but I couldn't focus. I watched the others, a husband gently rubbing his wife's back, a daughter holding her elderly father's hand, a couple leaning against each other. When my pager buzzed, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. A nurse led me to pre-op. I changed into a gown, got in 4. "Is there someone waiting for you?" she asked. "No," I said, tired of the question, tired of the pitying looks. She made a note, but I saw the frown. I was moved to a curtained bay. "Amber Williams?" I opened my eyes. Christine, the nurse from Dr. Thompson's office, stood there. "Christine? What are you doing here?" "I assist Dr. Thompson on surgery days," she explained, a warm smile. "I wanted to check in on you. How are you feeling?" "Nervous," I admitted, "but ready to get it over with." She checked my chart. "I see you're still alone." "As planned." Christine hesitated, then pulled up a stool. "Amber, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I'm concerned about your post-operative care. This is not a minor procedure. The first 72 hours are critical for monitoring complications." "I have transportation arranged," I repeated. "Transportation is one thing. Proper care is another." She leaned closer, her voice gentle but firm. "You mentioned your family is in Cabo. Have you told them exactly what this surgery is for?" I looked away. "Do they know it's for cancer?" The words still made my stomach clench. "No," I admitted. I didn't want to worry them. Christine placed her hand on mine, a small gesture of comfort that nearly undid me. "Amber, I know it's not my place, but I think they should know. If something were to happen, if you were to have complications." She didn't finish. "Would you like me to call them?" she offered. As a medical professional, I could explain the situation objectively. For a moment, I was tempted. So tempted. I thought about my family, probably at breakfast in some beachside restaurant, laughing. I thought about the disruption this news would cause. The guilt they might feel, the resentment that guilt might breed. Then I thought about waking up from anesthesia alone, about struggling into my apartment alone, about the possibility of complications with no one to help me. "Maybe you're right," I conceded finally. "If something does happen, they should know why." Christine squeezed my hand. "Do you have a number?" I gave her my mother's cell, explaining the international data situation. She'll only get the message when she connects to the resort Wi-Fi. I'll make sure she understands, Christine promised. Now, try to relax. Dr. Thompson is the best, and I'll be right there in the operating room with you. As she walked away, I felt a strange lightness. Whatever happened next, at least I wouldn't be carrying the burden of secrecy anymore. A series of medical personnel visited me. The anesthesiologist, a surgical resident, Dr. Thompson himself. Then it was time. They wheeled me into the OR. The anesthesiologist placed a mask over my face. Take deep breaths, Amber. Count backward from 10. I managed 7 before darkness claimed me. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the pre-op area, Christine was making the call that would change everything. Hello, Mrs. Williams? My name is Christine Reyes. I'm a nurse at Memorial Hospital working with Dr. Thompson. I'm calling about your daughter, Amber. Thousands of miles away, at a beachside resort, Sandra Williams excused herself from the breakfast table, annoyed at the interruption. She had no idea that what she was about to hear would make her abandon the beach chair she'd claimed at 7 a.m., the snorkeling excursion she'd booked, and the 5-star dinner reservation that had required a 2-month waiting list. What do you mean, cancer? Sandra's voice echoed in the resort hallway. She never said anything about cancer. Christine's voice was professionally calm but firm. Amber has papillary thyroid carcinoma. Dr. Thompson is removing the tumor and likely her entire thyroid gland as we speak. This is a serious procedure with potential complications, including damage to the laryngeal nerves which control the voice box and risk of post-operative bleeding. But she said it was just a minor procedure. Sandra protested weakly. That she just needed a ride home. Mrs. Williams, your daughter will need close monitoring for at least 72 hours post-surgery. She currently has no one to provide that care. She arranged medical transport and has a neighbor checking in, but that is insufficient for her medical needs. A long pause on the line. I had no idea, Sandra finally said, her voice small. We would never have, if we had known. I understand this is a shock, Christine acknowledged. But there is still time to make arrangements. Amber will be in recovery for several hours. We'll be there, Sandra said, her voice suddenly firm. All of us. Thank you for calling, nurse. Thank you for telling us what our daughter wouldn't. As Sandra rushed back to the table to inform her husband and children, Amber was under anesthesia, unaware that the dynamics of her family were about to shift dramatically. The journey back to consciousness was slow and disorienting. My first awareness was a rhythmic beeping. Then came the pain, a burning, throbbing sensation across my throat. I tried to swallow and instantly regretted it. Easy there, a gentle voice cautioned. Try not to swallow too much right now. I blinked, trying to focus. A recovery room nurse was adjusting my fore. Surgery is all done, she chirped. Dr. Thompson will be by to speak with you once you're more awake. I wanted to ask questions, but my throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. The nurse seemed to understand. Your surgery went well. They removed the entire thyroid, but were able to preserve the parathyroid glands and the laryngeal nerves. You're going to be just fine. I gave a tiny nod, sending a fresh wave of pain. I'll get you some ice chips, she said, patting my hand before stepping away. As my senses slowly returned, I became aware of a warm pressure on my right hand. Someone was holding it. I turned my head slightly, wincing, and saw a figure slumped in a chair beside my bed, head resting on the edge of the mattress. It took my foggy brain moments to process. Dark hair, streaked with familiar silver. The chunky turquoise bracelet I'd given her for Mother's Day. Her distinctive floral perfume. Mom, I must be hallucinating. My mother was in Cabo, thousands of miles away. She couldn't possibly be here, holding my hand, in a recovery room in Chicago. I blinked hard, expecting the vision to disappear. Instead, my mother's head lifted, revealing red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks. Amber, she whispered, her voice cracking. Oh, sweetheart, you're awake. I stared at her, utterly confused. I tried to speak, but only managed a painful croak. Don't try to talk, she urged, grabbing a notepad and pen from the bedside table. The doctor said your throat will be very sore. You can write if you need to. With a shaking hand, I scrawled a single word, Cabo. Mom's face crumpled. We came back as soon as we heard. Honey, why didn't you tell us it was cancer? Why didn't you tell us how serious it was? Before I could attempt a response, the curtain was pulled aside, and I saw my father's worried face, followed by Jake and Heather. They all looked exhausted, rumpled, like people who'd traveled long distances in a hurry. She's awake. Mom informed them unnecessarily. They crowded around my bed, their expressions a mix of concern, guilt, and relief. Dad reached out to touch my shoulder gently. Princess, he said, using a nickname he hadn't called me since I was 10. We got here as fast as we could. Jake stood awkwardly, hands in his pockets. How are you feeling? He asked, then immediately grimaced at the stupidity of the question. Heather was openly sobbing. I'm so sorry, Amber. I'm so sorry. I looked from one family member to another, still not quite believing they were really there. I wrote on the notepad again. How? Mom wiped her eyes. Your nurse called me. Christine. She told us everything. We were on the next flight out of Cabo. I frowned, processing this through the anesthesia fog. Christine had called them, despite my resistance. And they had actually come. They had abandoned their vacation, their non-refundable deposits, their carefully laid plans. For me, the recovery room nurse returned with ice chips, surprised by the crowd. Well, looks like you have quite the support team now, she remarked. We're her family, Mom stated firmly. We'll be taking care of her. The nurse nodded approvingly. The doctor will be by shortly to discuss post-op care and discharge instructions. As she left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the group. No one seemed to know what to say. Years of unaddressed issues hung in the air, temporarily overshadowed by the medical crisis, but not erased. I picked up the notepad again and wrote, You didn't have to come. Mom read it and looked stricken. Of course we did. You're our daughter. You have cancer. Dad corrected quickly. The doctor told us they got it all out. I wrote again. What about your trip? Screw the trip. Jake said suddenly, with uncharacteristic vehemence. It's just a vacation. Heather nodded, still sniffling. We can go to Cabo anytime. You needed us. I wanted to point out that I had always needed them. That this wasn't the first time I'd reached out for help. But my throat hurt too much for a lengthy discussion, and the anesthesia made it hard to organize my thoughts. Instead, I wrote, Thank you for coming. It was the polite thing to say, what was expected of me. Good old reliable Amber, always understanding, never making waves. But something had shifted inside me during those long days of facing cancer alone. The realization that I might have died without my family ever truly seeing me had awakened a dormant anger that even gratitude for their current presence couldn't fully extinguish. Dr. Thompson arrived, clipboard in hand. He nodded approvingly at my family before addressing me. The surgery went very well, Amber. We removed the entire thyroid gland as the cancer had spread to both lobes, but it was contained within the thyroid capsule. No evidence of lymph node involvement. You'll need radioactive iodine treatment as a precaution, but the prognosis is excellent. He continued explaining my treatment plan, my family listening intently. My mother taking notes. My father asking detailed questions. Jake and Heather hovering. It was surreal, seeing them all so engaged in my care after feeling invisible for so long. I am particularly glad to see you have support at home, Dr. Thompson concluded, glancing at my family. The first few days of recovery are challenging, and it's important not to be alone. Mom straightened in her chair. She won't be alone for a minute. We'll take care of everything. I closed my eyes, suddenly overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't quite name. Relief that I wasn't alone anymore. Anger that it took cancer to make my family show up. Gratitude for their presence. Resentment that it had been conditional. Love and hurt, so intertwined I couldn't separate them. When I opened my eyes again, Dr. Thompson had gone. My family was already discussing logistics. Who would stay at my apartment? Who would pick up my prescriptions? Who would handle my follow-up appointments? I can take family leave from work, Mom was saying. I have plenty of sick days saved up. I'll postpone my interviews, Jake offered. They can wait. I can reschedule my yoga classes, Heather added. My students will understand. They were making plans as if their availability had never been in question. As if they hadn't all refused me just days ago. The cognitive dissonance was too much. I picked up the notepad again, my hand shaking with more than just post-surgical weakness. I wrote in large, uneven letters, "Where were you when I asked?" I held up the page, drawing their attention. The conversation stopped abruptly. Uncomfortable silence. "Amber," Mom began hesitantly. We didn't understand how serious it was. I flipped to a new page. "You never asked. You said it was just a thyroid thing." Dad protested weakly. "You didn't say it was cancer." Another page. "You didn't care enough to ask." Tears streamed down my face now, the emotional dam finally breaking. Years of being overlooked, taken for granted, of being the reliable one who never needed anything. It all came pouring out in those written words. Jake looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "You're right," he admitted quietly. "I saw your message and just thought." I don't know what I thought. That it was routine? That you'd handle it like you handle everything. "We've taken you for granted," Mom said, her voice thick with emotion. "For years, we've relied on your strength without ever considering what it cost you." Heather was openly sobbing. "I've been so selfish, Amber, so wrapped up in my own life that I didn't see how much you were carrying alone." Dad cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable, but making an effort. "We failed you, Princess. Not just with the surgery. For a long time. Their acknowledgments should have felt vindicating, but they just made me more tired." I had imagined this moment so many times, my family finally recognizing how unfairly they had treated me. But the reality was messy and painful, complicated by my physical vulnerability and their genuine remorse. I wrote one more message, my hand cramping with the effort. "I needed you before this, too." Mom read it and nodded, tears falling onto her cheeks. "I know. And we weren't there. We can't change that, but we're here now. And we want to do better. Will you let us try?" It wasn't a simple question. And I didn't have a simple answer. The hurt ran too deep for an easy resolution. But as I looked at their faces, truly contrite, truly present, I realized I had a choice. I could hold on to my justified anger, or I could accept this imperfect beginning of change. I gave a small, cautious nod. Mom squeezed my hand gently. "Thank you for giving us another chance. We don't deserve it, but we'll work to earn it." For the first time in my adult life, I felt seen by my family. Not as the reliable middle child who never needed anything, but as a person with needs and hurts and a right to be prioritized. It wasn't a Hollywood ending. There would be difficult conversations ahead, old patterns to break, new boundaries to establish. But it was a start. The next few weeks were a strange new reality. My apartment, usually quiet except for Milo's occasional meows, became a hub of family activity. Mom moved into my spare room. Dad came by daily, bringing food, helping with household tasks. Jake and Heather took shifts, ensuring someone was always with me during those critical first days of recovery. My throat healed slowly, the angry red line across my neck gradually fading to pink. My voice, initially hoarse and weak, strengthened day by day. The exhaustion kept me sleeping much of the time at first, but as my energy returned, so did the need for conversations too long delayed. It happened organically one evening, about 2 weeks after my surgery. Mom and I were sitting in my living room, she knitting, me sketching. I finally asked the question that had been lingering. "Why did it take something this serious for you to see me?" Mom's hands stilled. "I think," she said slowly, choosing her words, "we fell into roles a long time ago. Heather was the baby who needed protection. Jake was the son who needed guidance. And you were the one who had it together. The one who didn't need us. I always needed you," I said, my voice still slightly raspy. "Just because I didn't fall apart doesn't mean I wasn't struggling." Mom nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I know that now. I think part of me knew it then, too. But acknowledging it would have meant admitting how unfair we were being, how much we were taking from you without giving back." She set her knitting aside. "Your father and I have been talking a lot about this. About how we've treated you differently. It wasn't right, and there's no excuse. But if you're willing to hear it, I'd like to explain some things. Not to justify, just to understand." I nodded, bracing myself. "When you were born, you were such an easy baby. So self-sufficient. Even then, you'd play happily by yourself. Rarely cried. Hit all your milestones early. We marveled at how independent you were. Then came Jake, who was colicky and demanding. And later, Heather, who was premature and needed extra care. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit. Somehow, we started seeing your self-sufficiency not as a quality to nurture, but as permission to focus elsewhere. When you handled things on your own, we felt proud rather than concerned. We mistook your competence for invulnerability. It was a revelation, hearing her articulate what I had felt but never fully understood. My strength had become my weakness in our family dynamic. I'm not invulnerable, I said quietly. I've been drowning for years. I know, Mom acknowledged, reaching for my hand. And I'm so sorry we didn't see it. Or worse, that we saw glimpses but looked away because it was easier. The conversation opened a floodgate. Over the following days, similar discussions happened with Dad, with Jake, with Heather. Sometimes heated, sometimes tearful, always necessary. I spoke my truth without filtering it to spare their feelings, something I'd never allowed myself before. I gave you my savings, I reminded Jake during one particularly difficult conversation. $15,000 that I was saving for art school. You never paid it back. Never even acknowledged what it cost me. Jake, to his credit, didn't get defensive. I took advantage of you, he admitted. I knew you wouldn't say no. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I want to make it right. He presented me with a repayment plan. It wasn't a quick fix, but it was acknowledgement and accountability, which meant more than the money itself. Heather and I had our reckoning while she was driving me to a follow-up appointment. I've been jealous of you, she confessed, surprising me. You're so capable, so put together. I always felt like the mess by comparison. I'm not put together, I told her. I'm just good at pretending. And everyone made it clear that's what was expected of me. She nodded. I'm trying to understand my role in all this. I think I liked having you as the responsible one because it let me off the hook. I could be the fun sister, the spontaneous one, while you handled the hard stuff. That's not fair to either of us, I pointed out. You're an adult. You should get to be responsible sometimes. And I should get to fall apart occasionally without the world ending. You're right, she agreed. I want to be someone you can rely on, Amber. I want to be a real sister, not just someone who takes. The final test of these new dynamics came 6 weeks after my surgery, when I received my pathology report following the radioactive iodine treatment. I had asked my family to come to my apartment for the discussion. They all arrived promptly, faces anxious but supportive. We sat in my small living room as I opened the envelope. No evidence of residual cancer, I read aloud, relief washing over me. Regular monitoring recommended, but prognosis excellent. The collective exhale was audible. Mom wiped away tears. Dad squeezed my shoulder. Jake and Heather exchanged relieved glances. We should celebrate, Heather suggested. Maybe dinner at that Italian place you like? Actually, I said, gathering my courage, I wanted to talk to you all about something else first. I told them about the art school in New York that still interested me, about researching online programs that would allow me to earn my degree while freelancing, about my dream that had been deferred but never abandoned. In the old family dynamic, this announcement would have been met with dismissal or token encouragement that masked actual disapproval. But something had shifted fundamentally between us. That's wonderful, Amber, Mom said sincerely. What can we do to help make this happen? Tell us what you need. Dad added. We're all in. Jake offered to help me build a website for my portfolio. Heather volunteered to connect me with a friend who had attended the same program. They were engaged, interested, supportive in practical ways, not just with empty words. 6 months after my surgery, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, examining the now faint scar across my neck, I reflected on how much had changed. My family wasn't perfect. We still had moments of falling into old patterns, still had disagreements. But there was a fundamental difference. I was visible now. My needs mattered. My boundaries were respected. I had learned to speak up without apology, to ask for help without shame, to express disappointment without fear. And my family had learned to listen, to show up consistently, to give back in proportion to what they received. The strangest part was that I didn't regret what happened. Not the cancer, certainly. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But I didn't regret Christine making that call, forcing the truth into the open. Sometimes it takes the prospect of losing something to recognize its true value. For my family, the possibility of losing me made them see me, perhaps for the first time. And for me, facing my mortality helped me understand that being strong doesn't mean being alone. That self-sufficiency is admirable only when it's a choice, not when it's the only option. That family means nothing if it's conditional. I don't know what would have happened if I had told them myself about the cancer from the beginning. Maybe they would have canceled their trip willingly. Maybe they would have found a way to rationalize still going. It's a question without an answer. What I do know is that sometimes a painful truth is the only thing that can break through years of comfortable illusions. For my family, hearing from Christine that I had cancer while they were on a beach in Cabo was the wake-up call they needed. For me, their response, dropping everything to be by my side, was proof that beneath the neglect, the taken-for-granted dynamic, there was love worth salvaging. I no longer measure my worth by what I can give others or how little I need in return. I've learned that true strength isn't found in silence or self-sacrifice, but in honesty and mutual support. Sometimes letting people see your vulnerability is the bravest thing you can do. I don't regret that phone call. Sometimes a painful truth is what saves a relationship that truly matters. Have you ever experienced a moment when something difficult ultimately led to healing in your family? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe. It helps others find these stories of resilience and transformation. And remember, sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones most worth having. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it inspires you to speak your truth, whatever it may be.